afternoon, depending on where you are. Today, we're going to talk about how to advance your product management career rapidly. So I'm honored that you're joining us today, and I look forward to the discussion. Please, as the moderator just said, I do want this to be interactive. I want you to get a lot out of this particular session. So if you have a question, please come off mute, turn on your camera. I want to make sure you get a lot out of this and not, I'm not expecting you to memorize my PowerPoints, as I want you to get a lot out of this, and I think the dialogue will help. All right, a little bit about me. I've been in the product management space almost 20 years. I started out actually in online travel and publishing, and then, I've been really fortunate. I've spent a good amount of time in fintech at Baird and Generac, where I worked on IoT, so a little bit of a hybrid between software products and hardware products. And then most recently, I was at Kimberly-Clark in the CPG space. I love to coach. That's actually my most recent role at Kimberly-Clark, was a product coach, but I'm actually now at 280 Group, where I'm a principal consultant and trainer. I'm an active participant in different roundtables, so keep your eyes open on LinkedIn. If you follow me, I'll be continuing to do more sessions like this. My background, and I'll get into this and starting in the next slide, I was in IT, right? I went to college to be a coder, and I quickly realized that I wasn't very good at it, so I had to shift my plans a little bit. And last couple of bullets, I do have a lot of different certifications that I've been able to gather over the years. And please, feel free to ask me questions or follow me on LinkedIn after this. Okay, so what do we want to accomplish today? A lot of you are here probably because you are trying to figure out, what does it really take to be a product manager? What are the steps? What are the things you need to do? What are some of the characteristics or skills? And so that's really what I'm going to cover over the next, let's call it 25 minutes or so. And I hope as I go to each slide, if there's something there you want me to clarify, or you want me to answer a question or get, further dive into something, please raise your hand. Being a product manager, it really starts with, attitude and having a plan. And we're going to talk about some of those into a greater detail as we move along. All right, so let me start. Here's a quick story. I was 22 years old, and right out of college, I was a coder. And I was told by my leader that I was pretty abysmal. Pretty quickly, actually. He said, you're a terrible coder. And he was right. I hated it. It wasn't for me. I knew it the first week, right? I'm not the type of individual that can sit still in front of a computer all day with music on and just code for 8 hours. I need to talk to people. I need to move around. I need to develop relationships. I need to, be out and about versus, sitting still. And so, over time, as he got to know me a little bit better, he said, look, you have some very solid people skills. You have the ability to relate to people. You're able to acquire their trust. You're a good listener. You're always asking why. And so it made me really think about where I wanted to take my career when I was in my early 20s. If you had told me when I was 22 or 23 that I was going to be a product manager, I would have been like, oh, I don't even know what that means. Where it really happened for me was I eventually transitioned to an account manager role at the online company I worked with. And I became one of my clients, one of my customers. She was a product manager. Her name was Dawn. And I would have lunch with her. I'd have coffee with her, just talking about business and managing her account. And I would just, I'm not knowing it, I was grilling her. I would ask her, like, Dawn, why is Southwest Airlines wanting to invest in this technology? Why does Southwest Airlines want us to do X? Why does Southwest want to focus on a relationship with Disney? Why does Southwest want to focus, why does Southwest want to build the following products in their Las Vegas market? And so she kiddingly told me that, you should really think about being a product manager, because you're constantly asking why, and you're thinking about the customer and how it really adds value to the users. So, I know this slide says career planning, where to start. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to be a little bit introspective in your career, and you have to look at yourself and take inventory of what do you enjoy doing? Because being a really successful product manager, there's some very tangible skills that you need to have to be successful. First of all, it's the attitude, right? I'm going to talk about this in a couple of coming slides, but when you take that inventory, you have to look at, can you roll with the punches? Do you like to ask questions? Are you always asking why? Are you pretty inquisitive? Are you persistent? How do you feel about dealing with people and relationships? Can you accept failure, right? So when people ask me, where to start and say, well, kind of develop a plan, you just got to think about yourself first. You got to think about what it is that you're most comfortable doing, and really pursue a career in that space. It's definitely not for everybody. Again, it takes a certain amount of skills that are just ingrained in who you are as an individual. And I think that's what I really try to tell people that are newer to this space is, you got to have a little bit of self-reflection, and after you do that self-reflection, I would tell you, then it starts with a plan. And I'll say the word plan probably a few more times as we go through our slides, because really being a really amazing product manager means you have a plan, but you're able to adjust that plan on the go, right? You're going to plan for your career. You're going to develop a roadmap, just like you would for a product. You're going to have milestones. You're going to, reevaluate at those milestones and see if that's the path you still want to go, or do you need a pivot? And in product management, it's the same thing. You have a plan for a product. You have a vision where you want to go. And then the features on your roadmap are those milestones along the way. And you're going to constantly evaluate your journey as you hit each of those milestones to make sure that you're going in the right direction. So that's really what I try to tell people is, where to start. Be honest with yourself. Be introspective. Ask people around you. That's honestly, I probably, before I went back to grad school, I probably spent a couple of years asking people that question, not just my mentor, Dawn, but I'd ask coworkers, I asked my family, I asked some of my friends from college, and they all really reinforced some of those characteristics that are really critical to being a product manager. And then my plan was go back, get an advanced degree, and focus on the marketing and the product side of business. And then while I did that, again, this was my plan, try to apply some of the concepts that I was doing in grad school and apply them in my day-to-day job. Offer to do work on the side for your mentor, offer to do, find a product manager in your organization and say, can I help you do competitive? Can I help you do Porter's 5 forces model analysis of your market? Can I do a macro environmental analysis of your particular industry? Product managers need help, right? Product managers don't know everything. They need people around them to help guide some of the decisions that you're making. So I probably spent a lot of time on this particular side, but I just want to really talk about, you got to have that plan, but that starts with being truthful with yourself and introspective. So I've helped companies hire product managers and coach them. There are really a few key characteristics about those product managers that succeed very well, and that's attitude, right? When I hire a junior level product manager, I'm not looking for someone that has experience as a product manager. I'm looking for someone that's persistent. I'm looking for someone who has a good attitude. I'm looking for someone who can make lemonade out of lemons. I'm looking for someone who's positive, someone who's looked upon to be a leader, somebody that can bring people together. I mean, ultimately, that's the sign of an amazing product manager, someone who can rally the troops, right? You're like the general of an army, and you have to rely on all the different parts of your team to help you succeed, because it isn't you by yourself succeeding, it's the team succeeding, it's the organization that's succeeding. And we talk about being the bearer of bad news in this slide, and I think, yeah, you have to have some thick skin, because the most successful product managers fail a lot, and you have to be willing to fail. You have to try, you have to learn, you have to pivot, and then you have to continue to move along. Now, I'll tell you, there's ways to mitigate that risk. There are ways to mitigate the bad news, and that's really how transparent you are in your planning. Every step of the way, are you measuring outcomes? Do you have goals? Are you talking to all the different teams across your organization and keep them up to date? Because the more you communicate, the more trust you build, that bad news gets a little less bad. I guess if I could use poor English to explain that. Usually bad news comes when people are caught off guard. That's the way I look at it, because a very well-planned product roadmap or release inherently has risks. And if you can acknowledge what those risks are and talk about what your mitigation is going to be, then if something bad happens, then you have a plan. That's where a lot of product managers that are good, that's where they fall in that trap, is they failed and they didn't have a contingency plan, and then they're flailing, and then they're being emotional, and they're not using data to justify the decisions that they want. I'll take a quick pause, knowing that I have 17 minutes. Any questions about the first couple of slides that I've reviewed with you guys? Feel free to come off mute or put something in the Slack channel. Okay. I'll keep on going. Okay, so I talked about my friend Dawn. I actually had a couple. I'm calling them Jane and Dawn. I still talk to both of them to this day. This is where, when I was on the IT side, they were my accounts. I was an account manager, and once a week I would talk to them. I would ask them questions. They would let me know when a particular vendor would come into town, or they talk to me about business planning. Business planning is freak out mode for a lot of product managers, because you're trying to put together your business case. You're trying to justify your expenses for the upcoming year. And so I knew they necessarily couldn't meet with me during that 2-month period. So what I did is I made myself available to, like I said, run competitive, chase some information down. Because ultimately, what you'll find is, as product managers, you're chasing down data to justify the decisions that you're making. So, like I said, I think if you were to ask Jane and Dawn today, they always knew that this was a path that I was going to go down, because of how persistent, how open-minded I was, how I was willing to ask the why, right? Because here's the thing about being product managers: you're the customer advocate, right? You fight for the customer. You stick up for the customer. And for me, that was my natural inclination. You got to stick up for the small guy, or the small person, I should say. You have to be able to put your neck out there. So a lot of it is, I guess they told me early on, they knew this was an area of success for me, because I just was relentless, right? And that's a really good way to describe a characteristic of a very successful product manager, is you got to be relentless. So like I said, finding a mentor, building that right company. What I'll also tell you is, and it's a little bit harder today, obviously, in our virtual world with a pandemic, when I went back to graduate school, I did that over 3 years, because I worked full-time and I went to school part-time. You do a lot of group projects. And so I had developed a really strong cohort of people that I did work with. I still talk to those folks. It's been, let's think, 17 years since I graduated, 18 years since I graduated, I still talk to all of those individuals that I went to graduate school. So even if it's not a grad school, if it's a certification that you want to pursue, or it's a class or a series of classes that you want to take, it doesn't matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be post-grad work. It's, find an environment where you can meet other people, you can do group work with them, and then develop a relationship with them to the point where you can ask them like, hey, I'm thinking about going in the product management space. What do you think? Get their opinion, ask them what it's like, what product management looks like at their organization. All right, so I'm going to give you some free tips today. And some of these I've kind of already mentioned already. There are some very critical characteristics or traits about amazing product managers. You got to care. You got to be like genuine. You got to genuinely care about people, because as a product manager, you're that advocate for the customer. You have to kind of look, you have to look within yourself and ask the question, do I really care? I care. I'm frustrated when somebody's upset with one of my products. I try to put myself in their shoes and I have empathy, and then I ask questions. There's definitely a very strong level of professionalism, and that professionalism is in how you dress, in how you speak, in how you come across, and how you deal with conflict. Because the reality is you're going to deal with conflict, right? It's how you react to that conflict. Are you emotional? Do you walk away and come back? I'm an overnight processor, so I try to take it in, reflect, and come back. I try to say, hey, in the heat of the moment, let's walk away, and then tomorrow let's grab a cup of coffee and let's talk about this. Let's try to hash this out. All of those are what I would say how you can be professional. It's that lasting impression of you that you leave with the head of finance, the head of accounting, the head of cybersecurity. And to that point, I talk about the coffees, right? You got to be an active listener. If you take one of our classes at 280, you'll hear me say in the first module, the product manager in the organization, they're responsible for the who and the why, right? And in order to understand the who and the why, you have to be a really darn good listener. Your responsibility or accountability isn't the feature. Let your team come up with the feature. Bring the problem statement, the problem scenario to your team, and let them brainstorm with you ways that they can solve it. Maybe they're thinking of something you haven't even thought of that can take half as much time and cost 3/4 less money than if you had built a feature from scratch. And to that point, that's where, asking why, being really persistent, like I said, being relentless about it. When we talk about things not to do, right? And I've witnessed this firsthand. Part of being a really good product manager is developing strong and trusting relationships. And even if you don't need to work with the head of cybersecurity today or the head of accounting today, it doesn't mean in the future you won't. So even if you don't like a decision that they've made, you have to be empathetic. You have to understand the why, and then you have to walk away, even if you don't agree. But don't, under no circumstances, burn those bridges, because you're going to rely on them for help in the future. I never thought I'd say this, but don't stay too long. My dad, my father-in-law, I should say, worked in pharmaceutical sales for 35 years. At the end, he got the gold watch. He told me after I graduated from college, he's like, the smartest thing you ever did was, go and get another degree and move around. That's how you learn. Every company practices product management very differently. And part of the reason why I love what I do is I've had that experience. I'm not saying you jump around every month or every year, but you need to get that broad perspective, because I've been at, let's call it half a dozen companies. Each of them have practiced product management in a very different way. And so I take that with me and I leverage those lessons. And I think that's really the lessons, right? You want to learn along the way. You want to have those failures along the way, and then you want to leverage those lessons so that you know and can tell somebody else not to make the same mistakes you experienced. Be decisive. Right? That's why I have that bullet on the next two bullets. Don't, be decisive and don't be complacent. You have to, especially in this world right now, there are a lot of great opportunities out there, guys. There are tremendous opportunities out there in the product management space. The market is as awesome as it'll ever be. And I think if you have the right mindset and the right attitude, now is the time to make that leap. Now is the time to ask those questions. Be inquisitive. I'll tell you, the last job I got, I probably interviewed 3 or 4 people at that organization. I even interviewed somebody who left and asked why they left. So, leverage your LinkedIn network or connect with people and ask, because that's the only way you're ever going to learn. And building a safety net, some of that comes with constantly keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date. I probably tweak mine every 6 to 12 months because it's like a life insurance policy. You hope you never have to use it, but if you do, you're ready to go. You're prepared. You have that safety net. So building those skills, networking, asking questions will definitely take you a long way from the perspective of really growing in the product management space. Just got a couple more minutes here. All right, so if I could summarize it, right? We're at the last slide. It's really 3 main tranches of thought that I want to leave you with today. And that is, be introspective, set your goals, and make a plan. That's the first one, right? That's a big tranche. Then it's find the right organization and begin to network. Find a mentor or 2. Maybe start off with 1, see how it feels, see what kind of time commitment it is, and then surround yourself with people. It's all about building your posse. I call it my product management posse. I have probably a group of 4 or 5 people where I live. I go and have coffee or I have lunch with every few months, and we just talk shop. We vent, we talk, we share ideas, we pick each other up when we're down. We remind ourselves like, hey, remember the time you did that really awesome thing? Like, you need to surround yourself with those kind of people. And like I said in the previous slide, you got to do the right things, right? It's the right mindset. You got to be flexible, build those relationships. Don't burn those bridges, and be decisive with what you want to achieve in your career. If you know what you're really good at and you've had other people support you, don't let a bad egg derail you. Be persistent, be relentless, because that will definitely take you very far in your career. Okay, with that, I have 6 minutes. I'm giving you guys an extra minute to ask me questions. So please turn on your cameras, open your mics. Please let me know what questions do you have for me. Hey, Christian, how are you, man? I can't hear you. That's okay. All right, Christians have some technical difficulties. Anybody else have any questions while Christian figures it out? Christian, you there?
Yes, I did figure it out.
All right.
So
good.
Any recommendations for getting a mentor? What is your take on that?
Find people that you have a good relationship with in the organization, right? It's not, put a note out there and say, does anybody want to mentor me? It's, look at who you work with, who you interact with on a daily basis, and see if they, see if they're willing to be a mentor. Find folks that are in the product management space in your organization and let them know, like, hey, my name is Christian. I'm thinking about going down this path. I think this would be really good. Do you mind if I buy you coffee? Or do you mind if I buy you tea? Or do you mind if I, can we just take 15 minutes? I just want to get to know you a little better and ask you some questions. Like, you got to take the initiative, because they're not going to come to you. And product managers love to talk. We're relationship people. So if somebody wants to talk to me about product management, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, Orville.
Yeah, my question is, so I'm from So I'm a software engineer and I have a really strong technical background, but I also have like really good business acumen, and I've always been a people person. That's who my mom was, right? And so I kind of inherited a lot of the same traits. I guess my question is, how do you navigate that transition into product management where you have the skills, but the opportunities to really act in the role hasn't necessarily been presenting themselves? So a little bit of background, I'm from Jamaica, and we are kind of just getting into that that culture where you look at things from a product perspective. It's always been like a waterfall culture, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to navigate, but I just wanted to know if you had any advice on how to navigate that transition.
So what I would tell you is a product roadmap isn't 100% the responsibility of the product manager. They're going to get input from the software engineer, because you guys know this. There's an architectural runway. Like if I want to build XYZ feature, there are some enabler features. There's some foundational work that I have to build first before I can build that feature, right? And so as software engineers, one of the tactics I would use is begin building what your roadmap is. You form a really strong relationship with your product manager, listen to what they want to do, and then, be an active participant in the roadmap development process with your product manager. Ask a lot of questions. Ask, when a product manager goes out and they interview a customer, or when they shadow a customer, or they do something called an empathy interview, go along with them. Be an active participant, be an active listener as they do those things, because I tell this in my class, when you're doing these different tactics to understand the voice of the customer, there's these different, there's customer councils and empathy interviews, et cetera. Bring along your engineering manager and your product owner if you're in the software space, because I've seen a lot of really good POs and EMs become product managers. So the more experience you can get being part of that process for the product manager, then that will give you that perspective that will help you build and contribute to the roadmap for the product manager. Be honest with your leader in terms of where you want to go in your career, and then build a plan. Tell them, okay, I want to eventually move into the PM space. Where I'm going to start as a software engineer is I'm going to build out my software engineer roadmap for this product. And I'm going to contribute, and I'm going to shadow this product manager for a period of time. And that's how I'm going to start to build some of those skill sets to really understand what it takes to be a product manager. So kind of put together a plan with milestones, and then talk about how, when you achieve each of those milestones, how you gauge success. How do you know you're on the right path? Like, part of being a product manager is showing that you have a plan, that you have a measurable goal, and that you can gauge how you're doing in that space.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. I think I'm on the right path, because I've been doing a few of those things. I've been shadowing my my product leader, and our ideation exercises. I've always been one that was vocal and out there. So I think I'm on the right path. But thank you for that, Joe.
Absolutely.